Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, the 15th of September, and welcome to our second day of live webinars. We're just getting set up here. My colleague's going to turn the light on, which puts a little bit more light on my face, and then we're up and running. We'll also just give it a couple of minutes to get everybody joining, then we'll be off. There's just a couple of technical things I think going on around me.
Sorry about that. I'm just going to get the chat open for you.
So just ticked up to 10 o'clock. We're just doing a couple of things here so that I've got video available to me, and also so that I can just see the chat box running. Obviously, I think everybody's fairly familiar with Zoom. If you've got any comments, then do please use the chat. If for any reason you're struggling with receiving the video, which you think might be our end, not yours, then let us know as well. Things seem to be running fairly smoothly, but who knows, when you're doing something live, anything can and may go wrong. Okay, so we're ticking up to 2 minutes past. Today's first webinar is the third of a series of 9 webinars we're running this week. This is on pharmaceutical and medical packaging. The bullet points we have for today's session are FMD compliance, validation of data matrix barcodes, feed, print, inspect and reject, using an offline coding solution, which we'll show you later, a little bit about printing online, and then validation. So very much targeted at pharmaceutical applications. So without further ado, let's just start by what we're generally talking about when we're looking at providing a system into a pharmaceutical application. The printing on a carton of something like that, a data matrix barcode, and some human readable text next to it is becoming ever more commonplace. And of course, the Falsified Medicines Directive has driven that with the requirement that each carton has a unique code. So if I show you 3 cartons in a row, then the bottom number, the serialization number, will be different between the 3 cartons. And you'd have to have pretty good eyes, but if you were able to decode those data matrix barcodes, they would also be different, because the information on the right, the human readable data, has been encrypted into the data matrix barcode on the left. So what we can do with the combination of TIG printers and feeding systems, or just TIG printers on their own in an online application, is to be able to print that information onto the carton surface. One of the key questions that's asked is, well, do we comply in terms of the verification of the data matrix barcode? And the best way to do that is to verify a code. What I'll do is share the screen with you of a Cognex handheld verifier. This is one variety of verifier. There are others. The Axicon is very common, which is more of a benchtop system, but the idea is exactly the same. The verifier will light the code in the correct way, and then it will give a verification score according to what it sees. So if we start to share my screen with you, then, and I can't always talk and think at the same time, so we just need to get to the screen. Okay, so if you're seeing a image there, you're seeing one I did earlier, which I'm not sharing my screen, I'm told. Hang on a second. Let's try it again now. Let's see if I get the nod from the people the other side of the camera. That looks good. Okay, so we've got an image there of an earlier scan we were just testing. I'm just going to take the verifier and actually fire it at a more recent print. Pull the trigger, and that's nice in the field of view. And we pull the trigger and we see what we get. And that returns an A grade. We don't get much better than an A. And when we look at the result down the right-hand side, you can see the various parameters that the verifier is looking at on that data matrix barcode. So very quickly to run through the idea of what's happening here. Symbol contrast is fairly, or we'll start at the top, unused error correction. Basically, it's such a good code, it doesn't need to use any algorithm to try and work out what's there. It just reads it straight. The symbol contrast gives you an idea of what the difference is between the background and the foreground. Ideally, it wants to be snowy white on jet black, but you'll never quite get that. Modulation tells you whether there's any black print or black within what should be a white area. Reflectance margin, again, to do with how it's the surface that you're printing into. And then the non-uniformities are saying whether it's square and also whether it's skewed at all. So if you get any stretching or any skewing, and skewing could be that the product isn't passing parallel to the print head, then that will degrade. And then finally, fixed pattern damage is whether there's any damage to the fixed pattern, which in a data matrix barcode is the solid line to the left and the bottom, and then the checkerboard going up the right and the top. This is what makes a data matrix barcode easy to recognize and easy to see, because any system looking for a data matrix knows that it's getting the solid left and bottom and the checkerboard top and right. So that's giving us an A grade code, and that was printed with a single head thermal inkjet printer. And as it happens, a colleague of mine, Martin, is just over the other side of the factory, and he's been running some samples this very morning for another customer, and these are them. And I said, well, give me one of those and we'll have a look how we get on the verifier. So this is freshly off a printer in the last hour, and there we are, we've got another A. And I'm actually going to use the camera just to show you that next to that, we've got 5 lines of human readable text, and all 5 of those lines have been printed with one print head. So that's pretty much at the limit of what you'll get off a single thermal inkjet cartridge, 1/2 inch high, 12.7 millimeters, but it's still a pretty impressive print for a single cartridge device. So again, that's just been printed without the benefit of a verifier, just Martin's eye for printing a good barcode. And when we give that another scan, there we are, we're getting an A. I suppose we ought to just prove that you don't always get A's. This is a barcode that was actually printed with a thermal transfer printer some time ago, and it's printed onto a Tyvek piece of lidding material. Now you can see it's not quite as clear, and when we verify that, we don't get quite as good a score. We're actually getting a C when I did it a little bit earlier where I was getting a B. We'll just give it another click and see what we get. Still a C, but you see on the right-hand side that it's those 2 parameters of modulation and reflectance margin that have knocked us down. Everything else is absolutely fine. And when you look at the code, you can see it's not as sharp as it could be. And as I said earlier, modulation is where you've got some black encroaching into white, and you can see how that's affecting the score. Still a C, still a pass, and very legible, of course. Any reader will read this with absolutely no problem at all. The unused error correction is still sitting up at 100%, so that's absolutely no problem at all. Slightly different one. This is one where we've pulled right back on the shaving to almost push it into the realm of being dots that you can see each individual dot, and the modules don't actually link. But even there, you've got a B. Again, it's scored it down a little bit on the symbol contrast. We're not quite as black as we were on the other ones. And also we've got a little bit of fixed pattern damage, again, probably because we've got those a dot style code, and we have that this line at the bottom and up the side isn't as solid as it could be. So it's taken the score down a little bit there because of that. But again, just demonstrating that certainly using the TIDGE method, you can expect to get an A grade code. We understand how these codes are scored. We have the verifier available so that we can check these and be confident that we're producing a code of the highest quality. So that's given us a little bit of an overview of the ins and outs of the data matrix barcode. The next thing we were going to look at was how we are actually applying that code to a carton, and in particular how we're applying that to a carton on one of our offline feeding systems. So this is a short promotional video of ours. I'm hoping that you can hear my voice over the top of it. There is a little bit of music in the background, but I'll take it down a little bit further. I'm just looking for a technical guidance.
Stop sharing and change the program.
We're not seeing it.
Okay, I'm just gathering that the screen share is poor, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go to my video independently, and then I'll come back onto screen share in just a second. So the video is running. I shall come back into the Zoom meeting. And we'll see if we can share the screen now. Right, let's try again, see if we can get a screen share. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. So we're sharing the screen. Okay, so hopefully we're now running the video showing the compliance system, and I hope you can hear my voice over the top of it. I'm getting a thumbs up on that as well. Okay, I'll just at that point. This system is our RF compliance. I'm just going to go out to full screen. Should have turned my email off because that's pinging in. This is our RF compliance. It is a system with a twin head X2 jet thermal inkjet printer and a Cognex camera sat here. Now this isn't doing serialization. This is, it could do, but in this format, it's printing the same information onto every carton, and then the camera is checking that information. So as we run the video, you can see the cartons running down, and the good ones are, there we go. And the good ones are running down onto the shingling conveyor. So we load them into the hopper. The thermal inkjet printer, it's an X2, not an X1, but a few people know that. There's the X2 control panel, and we're entering the human readable information, and then that is being added into the barcode, and that's being printed onto the cartons, and each time a carton goes past the camera takes an image. Now if it's bad, it goes down the reject flap, which you can just see popping up there, and goes down into the reject bin. And if it's good, it carries on onto the shingling conveyor. So there you can see cartons running down. You'll get a bit more detail here of the automatic reject system. So there's the flap. Very quick, very efficient way of getting a reject off the belt. This is the standard HMI for a standard system. I'm going to show you a more complicated one in just a moment. And again, putting on there the GTIN, the lot, and the expiry date with, in this instance, each carton bearing the same code. Okay, let me just go into one other video. I'm just going to check that people are seeing that we've changed video, which I'm told that they are, and we'll go full screen on this. This is another version of the compliance, but this one is actually putting a serialization code onto every carton. We've got a twin head printer again. Once again, I think we're only running one print head, but that's a small detail. But this time we're actually printing a unique code on every carton using a Siemens control system, the control panel of which will come into view in just a second. So again, cartons running down the system, but now we've got a different HMI. This one is showing, let's see if we just stop at a slightly clearer one, where it's in this, as we go across the columns, it's read what the serial number is, whether that's a pass or a fail. We've put a few rejects in. It's reading the text and giving it a grade against comparison, well up in the 80%. And then it's also doing a process grade of the data matrix barcode. Now it's given a consistent C. Bear in mind that a process grade is not the same as a verification grade, and it tends to be lower than a true verification grade, as we were doing on the bench earlier. If you're printing on this system and getting B's and C's, you can reckon on the verifier you're getting A's and B's. So it's just a check that you're producing to a standard. So there we see, that's a little bit sharper, what's going on. And then as the cartons are coming past, that table is refreshing. And then we've just there switched to the camera view. And again, we can see here that the camera has read the barcode. It's read the human readable information. It's compared the human readable information with what's in the barcode to make sure that they agree. It's giving us a overall grade of a C. It's knocked us back there on contrast. And then as we run, we can see that this number is changing, and so is the data matrix barcode changing, because each carton is being printed differently. And then if we go to there, you can see that we got a reject because there were two big black X's on a carton to force a fail. So that gives you a view of the more complicated RF compliance system, where we're using a Siemens control system to interface with an external database and use that database information to send the information to the printer, send the information to the camera, get the camera to check the printer's printed what it's told to, and then also update the database with the serialization numbers that have been valid, and you can also write a log of the ones that have failed. So that's the more complicated side of the compliance. The first video you saw was a simpler application where we were putting the same information onto every carton. Now, of course, as you see that video running again, what we're doing there, printing onto the carton in its flat form, we can equally well print in erected carton. One of the advantages of printing flat is, of course, that we present the carton to the print head in about the most ideal conditions possible. The carton is flat, it's moving at a nice constant speed, it hasn't got any opportunity to skew. In a video I'm just about to show you, we have got an example of a data matrix station. Slightly grainy video, but it does show really well the online equivalent of doing this job. The print head is sat just there, and as is quite common with these devices you see, they're based on a check weigher, because a check weigher has an in-feed, an out-feed, and a reject device. So this part here, if it was a check weigher, would have a load cell. But here we've got the printer, here we've got the camera, and this was a test that was being run up to really exercise the printer, and in fact the whole system, to put cartons down through it at the closest possible pitch. So we'd have a stack of cartons coming down, as you'll see in a moment. And then talking again about carton presentation, this is doing everything it can to keep the carton nicely presented as it goes past the printer. So let's put some through. So there's a top belt which keeps the carton nicely secured and driving past the printer. One of the challenges is to make sure that the carton doesn't bow. You want the surface that's being printed on to be absolutely flat as it's going past the printer. So here the test was to put 1 down, put 3 down, put 5 down, and just keep running it up with ever more and more cartons to check that it would pitch them out and it would correctly catch a reject. Now, unfortunately, we set it up so well that in this video, we didn't get any rejects, but it gives the idea of how you can be using a TIG printer to make an online code onto a pack. So that's the online equivalent of what we were seeing earlier using the RF compliance. Okay, well, I've spoken fairly incessantly there, so I'll drop back into the meeting. We'll stop the screen share. We'll just see if anything's coming up on chat. Somebody's asked me to mention, not forget the rear verifier. There are, of course, many types of verifier available. One thing we find, and it raises a good point, is that you've seen videos there with Cognex cameras on them. Our interest here at Rotech is providing complete systems, but at the heart of them, especially offline, are our feeding systems. We can fit any camera, and the idea was when we designed the machine that we knew customers would have preferences for certain makes of camera. In some respects, the camera can be about the most sophisticated piece of kit in terms of programming and setting up. And if you've got one standard on site, you're not going to want to change from that. So the system is designed to be very easy to accept any camera. We can perform the mechanical integration here. At Rotech, we have quite an array of 3D printers just out that way, which allow us to print custom parts very easily, to make custom mountings for things like cameras. And then when you get onto the interfacing with the camera, we give the camera a signal to tell it when to look, and then we just look for a signal to tell us whether it's good or it's bad. And if it's bad, it goes down into the reject. If it's good, it carries on to the shingling conveyor. So designed to be very versatile in terms of what camera we can fit. And although we have a preference for making these sorts of data matrix codes with a TIG printer, in particular with a marker print TIG printer, we're happy to fit any TIG printer that you may be wanting to use. They're all very easy to fit. They're all compact. The cartridge technology is the same. It's all ideally suited to data matrix barcoding. Okay, so we've ticked our way down through the FMD compliance, looking at the verification of a barcode, how we understand what we're doing there. And we've looked at both offline and online printing solutions. The last article, or last article on the list is validation. Now, as a way of sort of presenting our credentials a little on how we work with validation, we know how the process is handled within pharmaceuticals as far as a validation package goes. I've got some examples of how we've stepped through the validation process with a customer from a few years ago, so it's not too live a project. And I'm just going to share those documents with you on the screen. So again, we'll just go into the share screen. And then I'm hoping that if I open up a document that you can see a URS pinging up on the screen. Somebody will tell me if they can or they can't. No, that hasn't worked. So let me just go into the share screen again. Let's see why we haven't got that. Probably didn't press share. And now if I press Word, you've got a example there of a very simple URS. Now we produce these simple URSs. We'll always be happy to accept whatever the URS might be from the customer. But this allows us to state in a few terms what the machine has to do, what the products are it's got to run, expectations of speed and that sort of thing. You'll be familiar with URSs. We sometimes use one of our own just to get the process running. And then the next stage from the URS is that we can produce a functional design specification. So here we've got an FDS that we've produced. On my screen, it looks a little bit odd. I'm not sure how it's looking on an online screen. Okay. It fills the screen, that's the main thing. So as we scroll through the FDS on the screen, then you can see how we're going through the general machine description. The FDS, of course, being the functional design specification. This is taking the URS and saying, okay, given what you say you need to do in your URS, this is the specification of the machine that we will build to satisfy your URS. So we run through with various headings like a general machine description, the data, the utilities, the products that we want to run, how it runs in principle, what the print system consists of, the verification system, how we track the product down the machine. This particular machine was feeding, I think I'm still on in the corner of your screens, a single Tyvek lid. One of the specifications or requirements of the customer was that we had a double feed detection system. So we added that onto the in feed of the system so that if there was 2 lids coming through or more lids coming through, it would put those into the reject unprinted. So again, that appeared in the FDS. Some details about running modes, alarms and warnings, what happens on power loss, what the interfaces are, user access control, the specification of the hardware architecture with just a diagram showing how everything is interrelated. Some more information on the printer and the vision system. At the end, there's an I/O list for the PLC, things, sensors and detect devices. Some talk about the software hierarchy, the program modules, and so on, going through the FDS. So finishing up with an I/O list for the PLC and a statement of system alerts. So that was the FDS that was produced. And then, of course, once we've built the machine, you need to know that it does everything that we say it will. So that's when we come on to an IQ/OQ documentation, the installation and operational qualification document. And here again, for the same project, we have the IQ/OQ protocol, where as we go through, you can see the various introduction sections, list of sections, signature log, and then we're into the test scripts. So starting with the simple stuff, the visual inspection of what's going on, noting down serial numbers of PLC, checking that it's to a drawing, checking that the electrical cabinet is to the drawings, and then going in through that the utilities are correctly installed, the software that's installed into the PLC, into the camera, the safety systems, checking the I/O according to that I/O list from the PLC. Screen navigation is correct. What happens if you shut down and you start up? Check that if you say it's going to print 50, it does print 50. Count those 50 and make sure the counter's working correctly. And then making sure that the printer has got the right software installed so that it can print a data matrix barcode in this instance, human readable text, a certain format, and then that the vision system can read and check that. We move on to the reject system. So again, we're going to test the reject system, check that the air is connected, check that if you disconnect the air, you get a warning. Then we put in a stack of alternating good and bad product. Printers disabled, but we run those down the machine to check that the good ones go onto the shingling conveyor and the bad ones end up in the reject bin. Again, we said there was a double product detection system, so that's tested in this script as well. And then we just go on to further running and going through for the, in this case, 2 different products, doing an actual test run of 5 minutes, and then checking all is in order, and then completing the protocol with just making sure all the documentation is in order, spare parts lists, equipment cleaning, health and safety, electrical diagrams, CE certification, and so on. So there we are. That's the IQ/OQ documentation to just demonstrate that, you know, we're very familiar with validation packages. We're more than happy to work to produce them. And of course, as the machinery builder, we're well placed to know what the machine should do and therefore how to test that it's doing what it should do. So on that point, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm hoping that I'm back in the room. I've got a thumbs up to say I am. I've been talking for half an hour. I have a cup of coffee in front of me, so I'm just going to have a quick sip. And then we're just going to see if anything pops up on the chat or if we have any other messages coming in to see if there's any other queries. As I said, this is the third of 9 seminars that we're running this week. We've got another one this afternoon, sort of following on the more security side of things by looking at security and traceability for high value goods, where we look at how we can use very fine discrete codes, sometimes printed with a UV ink, to guarantee security of product. Tomorrow we're moving on to our offline feeder range. You've seen one of those already in the RF compliance. Tomorrow we'll be looking at some of the smaller systems, notably for food industry, the RF light in particular. And then in the afternoon we'll be looking at some of the larger systems that eventually arrive at the RF compliance. On Thursday we're looking at outer case printing, large area printing, and on Friday we have a few other speciality machines, mainly centered around TIG, but also print apply labeling and little offline semi-rig application. So we don't seem to have too much pinging in at the moment. So this will be recorded. You'll be able to see this at other times. You may well get a link inviting you to re-watch it if you found it that compelling. I thank you very much for joining us for this session. I hope you have a good day, and we hope that you might join us at another one of the webinars, and that one day we may all meet again. Thank you very much.